Welcome to the artist talk for the exhibition Cutting Corners. With works produced during the pandemic, the exhibition surveys the different realities, thoughts, and ideas of 9 artists. Together, they form a visual anthology that looks at the consciousness, meanings, and processes in art making while navigating through a time of uncertainty and disquiet. The exhibition features recent works of Floyd Absalon, Bea Aspiras, Gab Baez, Baldovino, Burce, Pepe Delfin, Bayani Galera, and Miles Villanueva. The exhibition is running by the ArtistSpace virtual exhibition platform until November 26th. The link will be in the video, and hope you check out also the event page on Facebook. So today we have 4 artists from the exhibition, and let me introduce you to all of them. First one that we would be talking to is Bea Aspiras. She meticulously arranges the colors and textures in her paintings to achieve her nonchalantly spontaneous yet balanced aesthetic. The art takes inspiration from the stories she has accumulated through her extensive travels, both here and abroad, along with the beauty of the highs and lows of her daily interactions. She has a constant desire to connect with people through the art that she makes. Because of this, her paintings are highly personal and relatable. She can take you along for a ride in a safe space where you can both be vulnerable and secure. Leia earned her fine arts degree from the University of Santo Tomas and quickly joined several group exhibitions after graduation. Wanting to further her education and experience in the arts, she then decided to go to Canada, where she claims she has a natural affinity with, and studied briefly at Toronto's OCAD University before going to Vancouver to study in Langara College. During her stay in Vancouver, Bea was invited to join a group exhibition hosted by the Beaumont Art Gallery, which housed the studio she was renting. Later on, she was invited to have a 3-day solo exhibition titled Innermost, which was featured by the TFC and was televised worldwide. Shortly upon returning to the Philippines, she arranged for an artist residency and exhibit in Siargao. She collaborated with Primitivo Art Village, a local village for artists, to aid in the promotion of contemporary art in the area to boost the art scene for the island's youth. Bea is based in Quezon City, where she continuously paints and joins exhibits as a full-time artist. So she'll be talking about her works for Cutting Corners. We have Bea.
How to overcome the fear of making a bad painting. Hello, ako si Bea. Naglagay ako ng tidbits about myself sa slide so you can read that as I explain what my topic is gonna be. So as an artist, usually I'm faced with the dilemma of pleasing myself at the same time pleasing my audience and clientele. Pag naiisip ko yun, feeling ko nasa kahon ako kasi hindi ako makagalaw na maayos. Kasi may expectation ako na gusto ko maging perfect lahat. So, ngayon, talakayan natin paano ma-overcome yung takot na yun. Ano nga ba ang bad painting? What is a bad painting anyway? So, I will flash a few examples of different landscapes by painters I love. So, start tayo kay Edvard Munch. Siguro, sa mata ng ibang tao, it's not conventional, no? How this painting looks. Pero for me, it's very beautiful. Fernando Amorsolo, kilala natin siya lahat. Ganda ng painting na to. Next up, Vincent van Gogh, also one of my favorites. At his time, it's very what he was doing was very unconventional. But to this day, it's super unique. Next up, we have Maxfield Parrish, my all-time favorite painter. Yung works niya achieved by glazing, pigments upon pigments upon pigments to create a very sharp effect on the colors that he uses. So for sure, itong paintings na naka-display ngayon, universally pleasing siya for people because they're kind of like photographs in a sense. Kasi realist siya, and I mean, realism yung style. Next up, we have Andre Duran. He's a fauvist. Ang ganda. Gusto ko tong painting na to kasi very raw. Pero yun nga, at the same time, what I'm trying to prove is art is subjective. So, for me, this is very wonderful, but for other people, parang siguro sasabihin nila gawang bata. Lastly, we have Ethel Adnan, a female abstract artist, pero she focuses mainly on landscapes. So, pag titignan mo yung paintings na naka-display ngayon, kind of like may semblance of a mountain, of the water, of the sun, pero abstracted na siya. Again, for some people, they might not get the point. What I'm trying to prove is art is subjective. Different people can respond to work of art in different ways. Subjectivity is based on personal opinions and feelings rather than on agreed facts. A painting might be beautiful to one person and ugly to another, but the material object remains unchanged. So, ayun nga, art is very, very, very subjective. Kita nyo nga sa mga pinakita kong slides previously, siguro yung iba doon nagandahan kayo, yung iba parang, hindi ko masyadong gusto. So, ayun, subjective siya. So, paano nga ba? Eto, meron akong 2 steps to overcome the fear of making a bad painting. Number 1 is experiment. Go through failures. Win. Try a new idea. Scrap that idea. Think of a new one. Let your creativity flow and trust the process. Importante yung experimentation. Ika nga, the bigger the risk, the greater the reward. And I stand by that. Number 2, be fearless and do not shrink yourself to fit a stereotype. Project your ideals and aesthetic confidently. Super important rin yun. Because if you just try your best to blend in and not stand out, how are you gonna find who you are as an artist? So that's very, very, very important. Stay true to what you like and do that. Just keep on doing that. Importante yun. Be confident. So, ayun, on the right side of the slide, these are my 2 paintings for cutting corners. What we're gonna focus on today is my painting, Love is Brightest in the Dark. So, we'll go through the process and how it came to be. So, here are my underpaintings for it. It's very, very far from the outcome. So, ito sa pinaka-leftmost part ng slide, this is my very first underpainting for it. Ito yung pinaka-groundwork ko sa kanya. So, what I usually do, my process when making a new painting is I plan a color palette. So, I write down siguro 4 to 5 colors that I would like to play with. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll scrap that idea and then I'll try a new one, which is what you can see on the second slide. I tried adding other colors kasi, I mean, ang pangit eh. Hindi ako nagandahan. So, nagtry ako ulit. Pero hindi nag-work. So, sa pinaka-right side, nakikita nyo na parang medyo naglagay na lang ako ng kung ano. Kasi hindi ko talaga ma-express yung gusto ko ma-express. Hindi lumitaw yung original color palette na gusto ko. So, ayun. Sabi ko, sige, yun nga. I stayed true to myself. And I went through with it confidently, in a sense. So, ito na. Nag-focus ako sa pagiging confident ko sa kung anong gusto kong gawin. Tinapon ko yung una kong idea. And, kumbaga, parang sumayaw ako kasama nung takot ko. In-entertain ko yung fear and I faced that fear. So, I focused on the pinks and the yellows and the blues and this is what I came up with. Ito na siya. Nagkakaroon na ng parang form yung gusto kong mangyari, yung vision ko. So, ito, another step is know when to stop and shift your perspective. Very important na mag-breaks ka when you're doing something. Ibig sabihin, pag nag-break ka, parang nire-replenish mo lang yung sarili mo. And importante yun para hindi ka mag-run on empty. And that's when creativity flourishes the most, I believe, is when you truly respect yourself and your body and your mind and give yourself ample time to recuperate. So, ayun, pwede ka manood ng movies, makinig sa music, makipag-usap, lumabas, or kung ano man yun. Importante, to take breaks para ma-shift mo rin yung perspective mo. So, ayun, another example of that, shifting my perspective and taking breaks. This is what the final product is for Love is Brightest in the Dark. After taking numerous breaks and adding more and more details, and finally I came to the decision that I will leave it as is, na it's finished. The painting is finished. So ayun, from the very ugly first underlayer painting to this, ang ganda ng journey. And yun, parang ang galing kasi I overcame my fear of, sa umpisa akala ko walang papatunguhan to, ganun. Pero yun lang I stayed true to myself and I brazenly went for it and projected my ideals confidently. And this is what I came up with. So in a nutshell, originality is the key to freedom. Number 2 is do not be afraid. Number 3, taking breaks is part of the process. I cannot stress that enough. That is very important. Hindi porket nagpapahinga ka, tamad ka. Importante yun. Hindi ka magiging magaling kung hindi ka marunong magpahinga. Ayun. Tapos genuineness and originality is very important. You have to find that within you. So, ayun. Ito yung works ko for cutting corners. Love is Brightest in the Dark on the left and Romantic Comedy on the right. So, this quote, nung nag-aaral ako sa Canada, sobrang walang-wala ako nung time na yun. Walang-wala kasi parang araw-araw nga ako gumagawa ng paintings pero hindi ko alam kung saan ba dapat ako pupunta, ano ba dapat yung direction ko. Tapos nabasa ko lang tong quote na to somewhere. Actually, nakalimutan ko na kung sino nagsabi pero naalala ko lang yung quote. Ang ganda. All my big mistakes are when I try to second guess or please an audience. My work is always stronger when I get very selfish about it. Nung nabasa ko to, parang wow. Totoo. Totoo nga. This is what I do for a living. I'm an artist and I want to be selfish about it. And I don't want to second guess myself. So, when I read this, biglang nag-open up yung mundo ko and pananaw ko sa pagpinta. Tapos, ayun, papakita ko lang yung some of my favorite works na feeling ko na-express ko talaga yung quote na yun. And, here are paintings where I overcame the fear of making something bad. And I just want to show you guys that it's possible. It's very much possible to get over that fear and to continue. So, ayun. Thank you guys for attending. I have my socials on the right. Feel free to follow my art journey or send me a message. And ayun, thank you. Please view our exhibit. It runs until November 26th. I wish you the best in your journey. And just always remember to, be confident and be fearless regardless of whatever box is trying to contain and fit you in. Break through it. You can do it. Thank you very much.
Now let's talk to Pepe Delfin, who is a visual artist. And Pepe graduated with a fine arts degree from Ateneo de Manila University. And she is originally from Capiz, but has been based in Metro Manila since 2012. She creates acrylic paintings showing abstract compositions that express various combinations of repeating shapes and colors to portray movement and the passage of time in infinite loops. Some of her works are accompanied by animated versions of the paintings to create a more immersive experience. Let's talk about the works that you have for the exhibition. So I know that the title of the work is Calamity City.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pepe. Thank you so much, Gwen, for introducing me. Um, I guess I'll just like to start off my presentation with a closer look at my practice first. Um, so uh, it's a little bit personal. This is my workspace. I live in Quezon City, and I actually don't have a studio. I work around the house. I work in our hallway. I work in my bedroom, and I work in our living room. Um, as you can see here, these are the paintings that line up our hallway. Um, Old and new works. So tinatawag ko siyang yung personal exhibit ko at home. This is my workspace pag nasa living room. Sobrang compact niya kasi maraming gamit around. And then this is how it looks like when I work in my bedroom. So the scenery changes a lot. Even if I'm just inside the house. I used to like walking outside so I can get some new ideas, but because of this pandemic, we're kind of stuck at home, finding new places, quote unquote, to work at. And um, this is this is a time lapse video I took of myself. I guess I could say that I have a very systematic way of working. I like trying to copy how machines work. So in this video I try to paint by color. Mostly because I have to manage my time better so I can do other things. So yeah, and then I got into art mostly because of the things um I've seen from when I was a child up to now. I really look up to abstract artists. I guess that's why I'm also doing abstract art because and here it's the work of Juan Miro and Kandinsky. These are two of my favorite works of theirs. And I really like abstract art, mostly because abstract art has a way of showing the parts of reality that can't be seen. So sobrang spiritual niya. Um, and I really like it kasi the language used in abstract art is vast. And one shape can hold so much meaning, and the meaning changes depending on the artist who uses it. And it also depends on the things that surrounds this shape. So it depends on the person, the context, the time. And abstract art doesn't prescribe what it wants you to see. Rather, it gives you a space where your thoughts and emotions can run free. So I'm really inspired by abstract artists. I enjoy abstract art, and I love abstract art in the sense that whenever I see abstract art, I'm reeled in gently, and I feel like I have to figure out the secret message. I have the secret conversation as the audience of the artwork with the artist. Apart from that, I also really like watching cartoons and animated things. This is my favorite animated work. Also, it's abstract. It's by Chuck Jones. It's called Dot in the Line, Romance in Lower Mathematics, and it's based on the book of the same name by Norton Juster. So I really like it. I feel like it's a big influence on. It influenced me a lot in how I've been trying to do my art as well. It's a narrative, it's a love story, and it's told in just very simple shapes. And also, I like reading a lot of books. So that's why I think that creating a narrative with my artworks is also a big part of my practice because I really, really love stories. I love novels, I love fiction, sci-fi fiction the most, and I love comics. I love seeing how one drawing becomes another scene, and I'm so fascinated by it. I try to emulate these things that that I'm fascinated by. So that's it, like a little background on me. Um, Now I'll a brief background on the series that the works I have for Cutting Corners are a part of. So, the series Calamity City, it's an ongoing series that ponders on current events in and outside of the Philippines. So the first four paintings were made in January 2020. It was a quadriptych, and I made it when parts of the country were experiencing the the devastating effects of the impending eruption of Mount Taal. Tapos months later, news of a pandemic broke out, which resulted in lockdowns, quarantines, and a magnification of the problems in the systems in place. So this is the first part. This was the quadriptych, and this is how the second part looks like, which is me trying to take on the pandemic and the lockdown as a subject. Each piece features different scenes in a chaotic city filled with figures wandering about. Um, it's also littered with hidden messages written in Morse code, most of which are cries for help, calls for justice, and really just expressions of exhaustion. And the two works featured in the show, I'm not sure if you can see where one starts and the other ends, but it's these two. The two works featured are How Do We Know for Certain and Some of Us Don't Make It Back Home. These are the latest additions to the series. So, in the first part of the series, I just like to say that it mostly focused on panic and pandemonium and chaos. Because I guess that was me reacting to the news of an impending natural disaster, and it was also the start of the year, which usually signals hopefulness, and it has a lot of optimism, but that got upended because may bulkan na sasabog. Tapos yung second part, as I progressed in the series and taking on the lockdown as a subject, I moved away from the chaos and I created compositions influenced more by grief and loss and exhaustion and generally being confused. Because I think that's how I feel, and being exposed to social media every day, I get to see my peers, the people younger than me, people older than me, expressing pretty much the same thing, that we're all tired and we all want this to end, and we don't really know where this is going. Um, so here I'm gonna show the process of how this series came to be, and I guess also mostly how my paintings come to be. Um, it all starts with logographs and Morse code. I use this very visual languages to create different kinds of compositions. And also, me substituting actual words and letters for shapes is sort of me circumventing the danger of statements being quoted out of context. Because really, these days, it's a challenge to be outspoken about the things happening, and it's really scary. So I mean, I still want to say what I want to say, but at the same time I also have to think about how of my own safety, and this is one of the ways I try to circumvent that. um from my cheat sheet of weird visual alphabets, I try creating compositions out of mixing and matching them. Um, I draw a lot at night and I create quick sketches. So I focus on a word based on the alphabet. I try to create some, for example, I think of the word window and I relate it to the lockdown, and I try to construct shapes based on those letters, and then those random shapes become compositions, and those compositions become actual sketches and they turn into paintings. Um, so and those are the things that mostly fill up my notebook, and that's where I mostly get my ideas for painting. So when I do start creating compositions, I also base them on a rigid grid system, mostly because I want to be able to seamlessly connect each of my works to each other, so they look like they're different parts of a city and they're different parts of a narrative. Um, And again, I try to paint it like a machine would print using plates. So I take it color by color, and then from nothing it becomes something. And mostly this is me trying to gain a semblance of control, um, especially these days. Because I feel like there's a lot of surprises that happen every single day. There's something new, something you have to react to, and something that kind of beats you down. And honestly, like these days for me, art has become very therapeutic, and me trying to organize my process, at least of working, has helped me a lot with coping with everything that's been happening. And um and I think that's it. And I guess with everything that I've created and I've been doing, what I've been trying to do is, because an artist has and plays a lot of roles, and one of which I think and I believe is that we're part of recording history as it happens. Our present now, when we record it, will become the past in the future. And I think that's what I want to contribute to, creating and recording this bigger story that happens outside of us in the different realities we're exposed to. I'm trying to record impressions of the world and the realities I'm witnessing. And every single work that I do is part of a larger narrative. And I honestly hope that it helps in giving a glimpse, a more honest glimpse of what's happening in the world, especially because we're bombarded by a lot of fake narratives as well. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pepe. And it's really nice to understand your work more and to also see the transformation of the narratives from the very chaotic scenarios where your works were drawn from to seeing them in a very orderly, um, systematic image, I guess. It's like you're trying to rebuild another city or another environment with all those hopes and calls for change. So thank you. And then now we move on to the next artist that we have for the talk. And the next artist is Bayani Galera. Next artist is Bayani Galera. He's an award-winning visual artist from Malabon City. He finishes Bachelor of Fine Arts major in Advertising Arts degree from the University of the East, Caloocan. Growing up, Bayani has lived in several cities and studied in various schools before settling his roots in Malabon. This nomadic background has given him his inspiration for his masterpieces today, which evolve around chairs, most especially his favorite, the school chairs. Bayani uses these school chairs to tell his stories, hoping that viewers could also relate to his chairs and eventually evoke their own personal and notable stories. For him, they do not only serve their function for seating, but as capsules of memories and experiences. He also sees himself as more than an artist and hopes that he translates to others, most especially to his audience, as a storyteller. One of his personal favorites among his works is his first ever chair piece entitled Sa Aking Pagtatapos, which earned him the grand prize at the 48th Shell National Student Art Competition for the sculpture category in 2015. His other chair pieces have also won him recognition as grand prize winner for FDCP and Cinematheque Center Manila Pistanang Pangmalikhaing Pilipino 2017 Mixed Media category, third place and finalist at the 50th and 49th Shell National Student Art Competition watercolor category in 2017 and 2016, and a semifinalist in the oil and acrylic category of the Metrobank Art and Design Excellence 2015. Currently, Bayani continues to share his passion and stories with chairs as a full-time artist, having joined shows in various exhibitions and in galleries all over the metro. So, Bayani, how are you?
Ako si Bayani Galera. Graduate ako ng UE Caloocan. Yung kwento nung mga work ko nag-start nung 2015. Bakit puro silya yung ginagawa ko? Nung binabalikan ko yung pagkabata ko, lipat-lipat ako ng school dahil sa work ng tatay ko na isang pare sa Aglipay o Iglesia Pilipina Independiente. So, kung saan assign yung papa ko na o madestino na church, doon kami mag-aaral. So, mula preschool, elementary, high school dito sa Malabon, palipat-lipat ako ng school. So, wala akong naging permanent na kaibigan. Nito na lang nung nag-high school ako. Elementary high school dito sa Malabon. Onwards hanggang mag-work na ako. Bakit upuan yung napili kong subject sa mga ginagawa ko? Siguro kasi nagsisimbolize siya sa akin as an artist, kung ano yung background ko, kung kung ano yung pinagdaanan ko, at relatable siya sa halos lahat sa atin na dumaan sa pag-aaral o nag-aaral na gumamit ng silang yun. At ito ay reflection din ng education system natin or yung academic system natin. Dun sa mga work ko, mapapakita kung paano siya ginamit dun sa 5 years na ginagamit ko yung subject na yun. Ito yung piyesa ko nung 2015 kung saan ako nag-start gumamit ng silya sa mga work ko. Ang title nito ay Sa Aking Pagtatapos. Binubuo siya ng 30 na upuan na magkakapatong. Yung 29 na magkakapatong, nagsisimbolo siya sa years mula preschool hanggang doctoral o doctorate. Lumalabas na 29 years yung pwede nating pag-aralan or yung taon kung ilang taon tayo pwede mag-aral o yung posibleng taon na gamitin natin yung pag-aaral. Wait lang, nabubulol ako. Pwede ulitin ko. Sige. Yung 30 na upuan na magkakapatong, 29 doon ay nagsisimbolo sa years from preschool hanggang doctoral or doctorate. Tapos yung pang 30 sa tuktok, pula, ito yung nagsisimbolize sa na pwede ka nang lumabas o ready to publish ka na. Numeric symbolism siya na sa katapusan ng kalendaryo is 30, kaya 30 ang upuan yung magkakapatong. Kaya ganun din yung title niya, Sa Aking Pagtatapos. Pula, bakit pula yung ginamit ko? Aside na from UE, colored red is yung kulay ng tapang at paghihirap. Ito yung nagsisimbolize na ready to publish ka na. Ito yung mga works ko after nung sculpture. May rule kasi sa Shell na once first place ka, hindi ka na pwedeng sumali ulit sa same category. So, sinubukan ko watercolor nung mga sumunod na taon. Yung nasa kaliwa, nung entry ko sa Shell, 4th year ako. Yung sa kanan, yung last year ko, 5th year, bago ako graduate sa yung nasa kaliwa. After kong magtrabaho, 8 months ako nag-work. Then, bago ako mag-decide na mag-full-time bilang artist, gumawa ako ng isang installation art sa NCCA, sa Intramuros. Tapos, nag-awal ako ng 1 week para gawin to. So, ang title nito ay Komunidad. Ang komunidad ay binubuo ng iba't ibang tao na may iba't ibang pagkatao na bumuo sa aking pagkatao. So yung mga upuan na nakikita nyo, kada isang upuan ay nirerepresenta ng isang tao na nag-influence sa akin or sumuporta sa akin, nag-inspire o nakikinig sa mga kwento ko. So may mga upuan diyan ng artist, may upuan diyan ng magulang ko, kapatid ko, asawa ko, at yung ibang tao na naka-influence sa akin or sumusuporta sa akin. Tulad nung upuan sa gitna na kulay pula, sa baba ng wheelchair, upuan siya ni Elmer Borlongan, isa sa mga influence ko sa ginagawa ko. Tapos yung tomato pincushion ni JP Duray, tapos upuan ni Wipo, yung tumba-tumba, tapos si Sir Fitz Herrera na upuan yung may nakasulat na love. Tapos ito ko yung upuan na maliit sa baba, nakapaligid yung mga upuang nasa likod ko na ito sila, tas ito ako. Dahil sa kanila, nandirito ako. Parang gano'n na kada isang tao ay may isang komunidad. After nitong work na 'to, nag-full-time ako sa pagpipinta, pag-i-sculpt. Ito na yung mga works ko. Ito yung studio slash sala namin. So, puro painting, puro sculpture. So, ito na yung work ko after 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 mag-awol or mag-resign sa corporate job ko. Yung corporate job ko sa school din sa Fatima sa Valenzuela. So mula nung hanggang preschool hanggang graduate ako, tapos first job ko sa school pa din. Hanggang ngayon madalas ako sa school kasi yung asawa ko professor sa University of the East, tas nagma-master siya sa UP. So, ang ginagawa ko pag nasa school siya, sumasama ako tapos doon ako nagpipinta or nagdo-drawing. Tapos pag nasa UP siya, tatambay ako sa Vargas para mag-drawing lang din, magpinta. Yun naman yung work ko nung quarantine. So, nung quarantine or nung lockdown, inimagine ko ano yung pakiramdam nung classroom ngayon na walang tao, bakante, hindi nagagamit yung mga upuan, tambak. So, parang siyang visual narrative ng kalagayan ngayon or reaction siya nung ilang buwan na walang estudyante sa mga paaralan. So, as of now, 16 na yung work ko na ganito. Tapos ito yung ginagawa ko buong quarantine. Inaaral ko ulit mag-watercolor. So, yung size niyan, 18 by 28. So, malalaki. Ito ko yung isa sa mga pencil work ko nitong quarantine din. Reaction din siya dun sa academic system or yung education system ngayon na kung saan nag-adapt yung Pilipinas sa alternative learning system or sa distance learning na kung saan gumagamit tayo ng mga devices or modules na magkakalayo tayo pero nag-aaral pa din tayo. Yung mga upuan, sira-sira pa din kasi yung tingin ko dun sa distance learning, hindi pa siya perpekto na ang dami niya pang kailangan i-improve. So, wow, ito work ko sa competition sa Ateneo recently. Ito naman yung work ko nung nasa ArtistSpace sa Cutting Corners. Ginawa ko siya noong January. Nag-start ako January para sa ibang show. Ito siya. Ito yung process nung ginagawa ko. So, process pala nung work ko, nag-i-sculpt muna ako ng mga chairs, tapos kino-compose ko, tapos i-shoot ko, tapos i-sketch ko sa canvas, tapos tsaka ako na ipipaint. So, ito yung part na sketching. Noong January ko pa siya ginawa para sa ibang show. Tapos, habang tumatagal, nag-iiba na yung meaning ng painting for me. After no ilang buwan tayo nakulong tapos ang tagal ko rin siya ginawa. Parang nauna pa nga natapos yung painting or hindi pa siya totally tapos tsaka nag-studies ulit ako. Yung nakikita niyong maliit sa gilid. Nag-studies ako kasi parang, hindi ko gamay kasi yung ginagawa ko ngayon kasi, canvas lang siya, wala siyang stretcher. So, inaral ko muna saan ulit yung lighting, ano yung dark, hinanap ko saan yung ilaw. So, ang makikita niya yung watercolor study saka yung painting mismo na nasa ArtistSpace, yung cutting corners na show. So, ito siya, yung sa left side yung yung studies, tas yung nasa right side naman yung mismong work. So, yung title niya is, In the Middle of Chaos, na kung saan parang pinapakita na kahit ganito yung, education system ngayon, magulo, sinusubukan pa rin natin na it i ibangon or itayo sa sentro na pwede pa rin gamitin or ayusin yung academic system kahit merong lockdown or ano, na yung basic kasi needs natin, eh. Kailangan natin yung education, isa sa mga kailangan natin. So yung di ko nabanggit kanina, yung mga influence ko sa work is sa foreign, sila Ai Weiwei, Doris Salcedo, si Andy Warhol, tapos sa local si Max Balatbat, Roberto Chabet, saka Elmer Berlongan. So, narrative yung gusto kong narrative yung nakikita, yung mga gusto kong work sa kanila. So, unti-unti parang kung ano yung mga works na gusto ko sa kanila, pinupulot ko tapos ina-apply ko din sa nangyayari sa atin. So, more on yung mga work ko, reaction siya. Kaya na recently dun sa ngayong quarantine. So, yun. Salamat sa pakikinig. Ako ulit si Bayani Galera.
Okay, and now we have Kat Grow. She graduated from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, with a BFA in painting, cum laude, and shortly after, she was the recipient of the Artery Mentorship Program in Artery ArtSpace. Gro's work focuses on the technical and traditional processes of creating materials used in art making, from personally sourcing raw materials to creating artist tools such as paints. Her practice is filled with repetitive actions that parallel both the loud and quiet, unseen formations of the earth and the spiritual being of the self. As she grinds, sifts, and extracts color from raw materials, her creative process speaks about social issues, economic of creation, identity, and spirituality. The tool as the artwork, craft, and repetitive, laborious task as methods of creation. These are what ground her and her artworks in the present. Kat, let's talk about your process and also maybe tell us more about the work that you have for the show. I think the title of the work is "The Other Side Is Always."
So I'll give a brief introduction to my artistic process. So my name is Kat. I'm a visual artist and I am based in Laguna. So this is like my profile here. I as Gwen mentioned, I studied BFA major in painting from University of the Philippines. I graduated in 2014. I am now based in Laguna, and my practice really has to do with mostly watercolor works. These are some of the artworks that I made in 2018, which started or like launched me into this type of style of artworks. Okay, let's go back. These are actually the paints that I made, that I used here are actually handmade by myself, that they are made out of pigments from plants. So definitely these colors will fade and change over time, over decades and maybe hundreds of years, but all of them are sourced here locally in the Philippines. So my whole practice is really about creating my own tools of the trade, which can be quite an alienating subject to most artists nowadays. This is another one of my works of a horizon. So this is a rather longer piece that I made using pigments sourced from rocks or soils. So there are a lot of different things that you can get, like different hues and colors that you can attain from natural materials. So most of these artworks here on the screen right now are made with handmade pigments made from stones and rocks. So those are the different like takes of my style with regards to watercolor works on paper. So this is a photo of my studio. Medyo everything is already kind of organized. So whenever I receive raw materials from my community partners or suppliers, one of them is this community of indigenous peoples from Abra. So they actually give me what you see over here. The branches here are cuttings from sapang, which is a type of tree. And then over here are leaves of tawa-tawa, which is the commonly known herbal plant used for cures for dengue. And then this is the hearth of a sapang wood, again the tree. And then some rocks which are coming from another source as well. Ito naman anato seeds, which are like achuete. And then I also handle semi-precious materials like minerals as well. This is azurite. So yeah, so I used natural resources to create my own pigments, and it's a really laborious process. So you can definitely say that my artistic process is a process-based one, in line with what I study, which is the perennial philosophy of art, which states that everything is sacred. Nothing is taken for granted. Nothing is ever mundane. And so some of the artworks that I do that are these are examples. These are hourglasses made by local artisans here in Las Piñas. The pigments contained here are are sourced from different locations in the Philippines. So some more samples of the pigments that I've made before. So this over here is a rock from Bataan, which produces a brown, a distinct kind of brown. And this is Santa Rosa, which I call like a Santa Rosa ochre. Usually I just call the colors based on the location that I got them from. And this naman is charcoal or uling. And so technically I am just kind of going back to the roots of how Western and as well as Asian art used to create how our predecessors or ancient peoples created paints or colorants, no? So they just went and used rocks and whatever was in the vicinity. And then so these are examples also. So I try to employ different processes in creating pigments. This is actually an example of just one type of pigment subjected to different heats of temperatures. So nag-iiba yung color and there is like a chemical change. And so let's talk about the basics of creating watercolor paint, because I usually just use watercolor paints for my paintings. So you have a pigment and a binder, and the most famously known binder for watercolor is gum arabic, which is imported, and to combine them together you have to mull them together. So you have this device. This is called a muller, which is made out of borosilicate glass, and then you have a slab of glass as well. So you are technically just trying to push together the particles of the pigment as well as the binders together, so that all the pigments are covered with a layer or a thin sheet of binder so that they are fixed on your paper. So technically this is also a process used for creating most of your paints nowadays that you buy from the stores, but yeah, everything for me is made by hand, because when you use machines and you automate, you lose a lot of your own inner essence, and you lose a lot, parang you lose things in translation because everything becomes cold. But when you're doing things by hand, even the heat of your hands transfer into your materials, and so that also kind of brushes on spirituality in a sense. So these are examples of the watercolors we've made before. Different minerals were used. And so, for example, I mentioned before is azurite pigment, which is a semi-precious mineral that you can create a very intense blue, but it's actually this is kind of expensive, so you use them in very small portions. Um, so these are examples of how you can actually grind these types of this is chrysocolla, and you can grind them up um, and determine the intensity of the color that you want, because the further you grind these types of things, semi-precious minerals, the more you grind them, the lighter they become. So you really have control over all of the hues and colors that you will use in your artwork. So for example, here is me preparing organic paints, materials for creating paints. And another type of source of color is animals. So this is cochineal, which is a type of a dried bug that you can get from they are mostly found on cacti, but they give you immensely magenta pinkish colors. So for local examples naman, as I mentioned before, is tawa-tawa, so you get this very nice yellow color. So all of my paintings, technically, I can tell you what source of natural material I used for that color. And sometimes I mix the different colors together. So there's a lot of science involved in my process. So I take up most of my time preparing all the pigments and paints. And then it feels like I believe that the artwork is parang the print, or parang bakas na lang siya. It's not really the main it's more of the journey rather than the destination for me in terms of making my art. But for the show Cutting Corners, I actually created an artwork that sprung from this one, which is a study. I've started recently folding paper and creating stains on them, so all of the pigments would settle down into the creases of the papers. So it's actually also a study of how the behavior of pigments work on paper, because before I used to only tear tons of sheets of paper and then create layers. But for this one, because we are in the middle of a pandemic, there is limited resources as well as, of course, paper. So main concern ko right now is that I don't have any more paper. So I really want to be able to study the same thing, which is pigment processing, but try to achieve it in less waste, or less, I would consume less. So these are parang ito na yung way of me into that. So I can still observe the how granulation works with my pigments that I create. So this is actually the artwork that I have for Cutting Corners. So it's entitled The Other Side Is Always. Because there is, we are all like nakukulong tayo in our own houses. And so most of the things that I would like associate with going to urban areas or to Metro Manila are the lines that you see with the cable lines and the buildings. So I try to mimic that with the folds. And also I like to play with the titles of my artwork. So the other side is always greener. So there's always a sense of comparison between the times that are happening right now versus to what happened before, when we were oblivious about what's going to happen in the next few months, and then the comparison of the future. So we're always trying to see the present in the lens or perspective of the future and the past. So that's kind of how I came up with this artwork for the exhibition. Yeah. And yeah, that's all for the most part of my presentation.
Thank you, Kat. That was really a very educational talk, and it's really great to see and learn more about the works of the artist. So now we move on to the we move on so to ulitin natin. Okay, so now we move on to the Q&A. So we want to learn more about the works and the art practices of the artists that we have here. Okay. My question for Bayani is, paano niya nakikita mag-evolve pa yung works niya apart from paintings and sculptures of chairs? But still keeping yung same concept of educational system, ganyan, narratives on educational.
Sagot na ako. Wait. So, ngayon, hindi ko nailagay dun sa PowerPoint. Ngayong quarantine, sinubukan ko mag textual art and collage. So, topic pa rin niya is sa education, gumawa ko ng isang series, a daily sheet. Sheet na papel na double E. Statement lang siya na kung ano yung nangyayari kada araw, sinusulat ko. Sa grade 1 pad paper gamit Crayola. So kunyari yung topic nire-red flag yung mga aktivista, sinulat ko sa grade 1 sheet. Sinulat ko ang aktivismo ay hindi terorismo. Parang pasok pa rin siya sa education na topic pero more on textual or statement. Kaya ang tawag din sa series is a daily sheet. Then yung isa yung yung mga collage, gumawa ako ng ano yung mga available na ginagamit sa school saka yung ginagamit ng estudyante saka ng prop kasi yung wife ko prop. So yung may mga gamit siya na hindi na niya ginagamit. Ginamit ko as collage. Ginawa kong collage na tapos kasama yung mga kalendaryo. So parang magulo siya. Ang main na ginamit ko is school calendar. Na-create ko nung graphic designer pa ako ng Fatima University. So, ang topic niya is yung sudden shift ng school calendar. Magulo yung pagkaka-create ng mga collage. Tapos nilagay ko yung mga grade sheet ng wife ko, mga IDs, mga photocopy ng IDs na from different school. So kung ano pa rin yung nangyayari sa education system, dun lang din ako nagre-react mga ginagawa ko. Dati nung mga early works ko, more on personal and numeric symbolism. Tapos nitong mga sumunod na taon, nagtatry ako or sinusubukan kong based sa reaction na nangyayari sa education system. So ngayong quarantine, parang may ongoing akong 3 series. Yung isa, yung learning landscape. Reaction siya sa pakiramdam ng classroom. Yung pangalawa, yung a daily sheet, more on statement, daily statement. And yung pangatlo, yung school calendar, yung shift natin sa school calendar from June naging August.
Ikaw, Kat, may question ka ba?
Yeah. Kasi I noticed that Pepe's approaches with abstract art is kasi ako abstract din si Bayani lang naman yung here tonight na representational, no? But yeah, I'm curious how you guys are, because Pepe seems to have a very, lexology ba yun? Ang tawag din, Pepe? So you have a set sign of like a language that you employ in creating your abstract art, right? That you can translate literally and you can decipher. But as for Bea, parang do you have that kind of approach as well in creating your artworks?
For me, sa color theory ako nagpo-focus. So, meron akong color palette. Doon ako nagbe-build upon. Sa title rin ako, like you, nagpo-play around ako sa title. And yun yung gusto kong mangyari sa work ko is for it to be immersive. So, since it's abstract, walang set definition for it. So, yung favorite part ko noon before the pandemic started is when people will come up to me and ask me to explain the painting. That's what I love is connecting with people and telling the story of why the title is like this, blah, 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 ganun. Pero ngayon, medyo challenging kasi nga wala nang face-to-face masyado. So, ngayon, yung ginagawa ko is to find, uh, to make that process, uh, much simpler. So, actually, hinahanap ko pa siya. Pero ayun, take it how you like to interpret it, pero the title should be a guide. That's how I go about my work.
That's interesting in itself kasi with what you're saying is that you enjoy the post creation of the artwork as well. But for kuwari, in comparison with me, really is it's the creation of the the preparatory stages. That's where I dwell upon instead of the finished product. Whereas you ikaw naman is parang kind of the opposite. So I think that the
Yeah.
difference of our practices are kind of interesting to look at against each other.
I have a question for you, Kat. Um, I'm very curious because so di ba restricted na yung movement yung pandemic, and then part of your process is actually going to communities and looking for materials. So I'm actually wondering how that has affected, like how the lockdowns have affected your sourcing of your materials, and how, because I mean I'm guessing you also try and research what colors can be made from certain sources and where these sources can be found. So how has it been going for you, and um how is it how has it affected your supply apart from yung paper?
So technically everything is not available or reachable unless you can like order it from like Day of Year or known stores from Metro Manila. Since I'm based in Laguna and the communities I'm in contact with are pretty far north up northern Luzon, so you can't simply just use LBC. In fact, at the start of the pandemic, I tried to order supplies from them, but ang nangyari is that was the hard lockdown start. So what happened was they tried to use LBC to ship a whole box of materials, but once it came to our doorstep, or actually I had to go to outside of the subdivision gate to meet the LBC truck. When I opened it up, it was very moist, very warm, so it developed a lot of mold spores. So I couldn't use that batch of supplies anymore for my practice because that's gonna interfere with the longevity of the artwork kasi it's gonna deteriorate the whole painting. So yeah, but right now I am about to finish like my whole stock of like resources. So ayun nga, except for aside from the paper, also the pigments, but I've been doing this for quite some time, how many years already. So I have like a good amount of pigments that can last, I think, from until the end of this year until siguro the next quarter. But it's been really tough kasi now you have to really be careful about what you're consuming because you don't have another option to like just order kasi the convenience is taken away from you. And plus, I really need like a whole a big span of time to prepare everything. So if I've already used it a source up and then kulang pa for this time, that will like extend up to a certain amount of time also kasi kapag once the new supply arrives, it's still gonna take me months to prepare everything. So, ayun lang, yung danger of it. So now, I'm trying to veer away from creating large works. However, galleries tend to ask for big works at this moment for some reason. So, para ako, okay, how do I negotiate that with the limited resources that I have? So, I'm trying to navigate that. It's quite a challenge. I think for all of us naman, we're facing that difficulty.
May question ako for Pepe. Okay. Hello, Pepe. You've mentioned na you love reading books. So I was wondering, if your favorite, halimbawa may favorite book ka, ano yun? Halimbawa, sorry. Okay. So yung author ng favorite book mo, i-request ka na gumawa ng book cover. Anong book yun? What book yung gusto mong gawan ng cover? And pwedeng humingi ng brief plot nun.
Embarrassing kasi alam ko na kung sino, pero hindi ko pa natapos yung series. But if an author were to ask me to make a cover for their book, I think gusto ko gawan ng cover yung sige. Gusto ko gawin ng cover yung Youth by Isaac Asimov. So actually short story lang siya. And it's about two aliens that found a tiny creature in their barn. As the story moves along, you find out na it's actually a human being. And I think na-fascinate ako doon sa story because you get to read about human beings from a point of view that seems very unfamiliar with who we are. And I guess also in general, I'm just a big fan of Isaac Asimov. And science fiction in general. Because parang, ewan ko, masaya kasi for me yung i-imagine yung hindi to, yung hindi yung mundong to. I like escaping reality a lot. So just to grasp at the straws of sanity siguro. Or also because it's entertaining. And then yun, maganda yung pag-describe niya ng foreign worlds. Meron siyang series about the rise and fall of power. And this one naman is the Foundation series. And I think that's it. If I were to illustrate a book cover, it would be Youth or anything that he's written because it's science fiction. It's something I really like, and I also feel like the aesthetic that I do would match that of science fiction and the worlds it tries to build. Yun. Thank you.
Wow, I would love to see that. Thank you.
I hope that all of you will be able to see the virtual presentation. The title of the exhibition again is Cutting Corners, and it features the works of Floyd Absalon, Bea Aspiras, Gab Baez, Baldovino, Stephen Burce, Pepe Delfin, Bayani Galera, Kat Grow, and Miles Villanueva. And the show will run until the 26th of November at the ArtistSpace virtual room, and we'll have the link up in the video. So thank you so much for joining us today. And if you have any questions, you can, I guess, put it in the comment section, and we'll try to address it as soon as possible. And have a great day, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Congrats,
Thank you.
guys. Congrats.
Thank you.
Bye.
Salamat po.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Gwen.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Gwen.
Thank you, Kat.